Dr. Daniel Notterman, pediatrician and professor in molecular biology at Princeton University. He co-authored a recent study called Fragile Families and Child Well-Being, which was published in the Journal of Pediatrics. The research found that the loss of a father significantly affects children at the DNA level. Now, the study showed that kids raised without a father compared to kids with a dad could potentially have poor health and shorter lives. Now, welcome to the program, Doctor. Appreciate your time.
Glad to be with you today.
So kids who were raised without a dad have much shorter telomeres, the protective caps at the end of the chromosomes. Dr. Notterman, tell me a little bit more about your study.
So we are part of a longitudinal study beginning around the turn of the century, in the late 1990s, 20 cities across the United States, where we were able to interact with about 3,500 mothers just before they gave birth, and subsequently with their children. Many of the mothers were single parents, and the study design was to look at families we called fragile families, where the composition of the family was unstable over years, with different men residing or loss of the biological father. So this was an ideal group of children to study the effect of paternal separation.
So for those kids whose fathers either died or were incarcerated before the age of 5, the effects on their system were quite noticeable?
Yeah, no matter what the reason for separation of the father from the child, either the boy or the girl, we noticed a shortening in the telomere, the protective cap, as you mentioned, at the end of the chromosomes. The shortening was greatest when the father died before age 9. Intermediate was the father's being incarcerated. And the effect was still present, albeit not as great, when the father had simply left. Dissolution of the marriage or the relationship between the mother and the biological father.
So the negative impact of not having a father impacted the boys more than girls, and why is that?
Well, we presume, but we don't have specific data, that there's an essential relationship between a boy and his father that can't be made up by having even a very attentive mother. It seems to be a gender-based relationship.
Now, did the circumstance around the loss of their fathers have differing levels of effects on the DNA?
Yeah, so the DNA we measured was shortening of the telomeres.
Right.
And the DNA, the telomeres were most shortened in those children whose fathers had died. Intermediate so in those children whose fathers were sent to prison. And less shortened, but still shorter than baseline in those children, boys and girls, whose fathers left because of relationship dissolution.
So why does the loss of a father have such a negative impact on our DNA?
So we and others, and several other groups, have shown that chronic stress, chronic activation of our stress mechanisms, and perhaps of our anxiety mechanisms, is associated with the shortening of telomeres in adults as well as in children. We have several other papers that demonstrate this effect in different contexts, and our colleagues in several different institutions have shown that a variety of chronic stresses in adults and in children are associated with this effect.
Now, another interesting finding was that a stable family income appears to lessen the risk, particularly for children of divorce. Is there anything else family can do to help repair or maybe alleviate the negative effects of fatherly loss?
Well, we certainly, in the context you correctly point to, when the father has separated but is still available to the child, most of the problem seems to be a reduction in family income with loss of the biological father. Certainly providing material resources to the family, either the father or, if necessary, by the government or charitable groups, should, we predict, ameliorate much of that adverse effect. It doesn't seem that a decrease in income and family income is what's at play when the child is separated from the father in a way that can't be evaded. So when the father has simply left the home, the child can still play with his dad or her dad, interact, stay over their house. But obviously, when the father is incarcerated or has died, there's no possible contact between the child and the father. And so
So,
that seems to be a much greater stressor. Excuse me.
so how about if, let's say, a father's at home, but he's not really interacting with the child, not playing ball with his kid? Now, is there still a difference there, or do you have to have that interaction between father and son?
So we've studied that indirectly, not in this particular paper, but we have looked at the quality of parental interactions and of attachment, not only with the father and the mother. And we believe that we do discern an effect, and we're working to sharpen our data and our analysis of that so that we can publish it.
Okay. Now, it isn't only father loss that shrinks the telomeres, but things like chronic stress and even a poor diet can have an impact as well?
So we have not studied diet, and that's certainly a ripe area for investigation. We do know that other forms of stress shorten telomeres. So in studies we've done, we've shown that material hardship, depression of the mother, harsh parenting are each associated with shorter telomeres in the children. Other investigators have shown links between a child living in a harsh or adverse neighborhood and shorter telomeres. And in adults, individuals who have the stress of very dense caregiving responsibilities, taking care of an ill parent or child over the years can also shorten telomeres. So it seems to be a general response of our cells to activation of our stress glands and our stress systems.
So, Dr. Notterman, overall, how important would you say the role of the biological father is in connection to the child's well-being?
So we think that this is clear evidence that that a sound relationship between a child and her father or his father is important. We know that shorter telomeres in the long run are associated with adverse health consequences. We don't know that they cause these consequences, but we know that they're associated. And so we think that this is important knowledge for parents and for caregivers. We don't pretend to comment on the nature of the relationship between parents or the composition of the household. We are just commenting on the importance of a paternal figure in the life of the child. And of course, we have no reason to think that there's anything unique about a biological father. We had that group to measure. We would imagine the effect would be the same with an adoptive father, or even with a residential father in a stable relationship with the child's mother.
I was a big brother for many years through Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Canada, and having that effect on a young child's life, would that also help in that respect?
So,
having that fatherly, maybe not necessarily like a fatherly figure, but maybe that adult figure, male adult figure to look up to and to connect with?
yeah, thanks for asking that, because that is actually something we conjecture about or hypothesize about in our paper. We think that one of the important obligations of society, and by that I mean government, I mean charitable organizations such as Big Brother, to try to ameliorate these effects, is to pay attention to children who have lost a father through death or lost a father through incarceration, to try to buffer this problem by supplying and providing other paternal type figures, such as a Big Brother. We haven't studied that, but we can conjecture that will be important in helping.
I'm glad to hear that. Now, will studies like yours possibly have an effect on public policy? What are your thoughts?
We hope so. Public policy changes often require an accretion of many studies and much knowledge, but we hope to contribute to that knowledge base and have other investigators examine what we've done and look in their own data sets, we certainly would hope to see public policy changes.
That's good. Hopefully more funding as well, and continue with your research. Dr. Daniel Notterman, pediatrician and professor in molecular biology at Princeton University, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.